The Ultimate Adventure continues, as read by the Bathroom Reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who has since ran off to Argentina to live with the Patagonian giants. Chapter 5. He started up from the hospital bed, still apprehensive of being dropped, but with thankfulness he saw that the floor was only a couple of feet down. A wave of dizziness went through him as he was glad to lie back. He had never felt so weak before in all his life. The whole room was going around and around until he wanted to reach out and stop it. The feeble movement he did make was barely enough to make the springs squeak. Bolton came to the door, grunting to see that Stevie was awake.
You're alive."
He crossed the room and grabbed a chair, seating himself.
"Well, come on. What happened?"
Resentfully, Stevie said, You sent me into a town where everybody was dead. It was awful. I don't want to talk about it."
"So," said Bolton, "you got to the City of Brass. Did you have any difficulty coming to rest there? I looked the thing over after you left."
"After I left?" gaped Stevie. Wasn't I in that chair all of the time?"
"After 3 days, we went in."
"And I was gone?"
"Yes, gone. I took the book and looked it over, and I saw where there were jewels and gold strewn about. Is that true?"
Stevie didn't want to answer for reasons he could not himself define. Perhaps he was thinking of Tedmer and the possibility that those slaves would not act again as they had on Talib.
"Well," said Bolton shortly.
Stevie continued his silence. Bolton reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the 3 huge diamonds.
"What about these?"
"I got them there," said Stevie defensively. "There's a tablet that says anyone is welcome to take what he can carry, and those diamonds belong to me."
"They'll give me working funds,"
snapped Bolton in dispute. He put them back in his pocket.
"Why did you stay a whole week?"
"A week?" gaped Stevie.
"That's right, a week."
"But I was only there actually 2 days and a night. How could I be there for that time and be away from here a week?"
"Interesting," said Bolton. "Let me see. 3 days, and we looked at the chair. 4 more days. Yes, you were gone a week. But of course we couldn't expect the sun to follow the same period on that plane."
"It's no different plane. Emir Musha got there from an ancient city."
"Ah, but did he?" said Bolton. "Or is this straight creative work? Well, you did get there, then, without harm. You vanished from the chair and returned to the chair last night. You must have eaten while you were gone."
"Some dates," said Stevie.
"Ah, yes, some dates. There were several in your coat. Did you, see anything of this Queen Tedmer?"
Stevie kept still.
"You are being very stubborn," said Bolton. "Boris?"
"She's dead. There isn't anything left of her," hastened Stevie.
"That's better. But there are jewels and gold lying about."
"Yes," said Stevie faintly.
"Then you can be careful to load yourself down with more of them next time."
"The next time?" cried Stevie, sitting up straight in bed, eyes like saucers. "But I can't go, I can't. There's an Ifrit."
"A what?"
"A djinn. He's as big as a house." He stopped. It sounded so incredible. But now that he knew it was no dream, now that he saw the diamonds, he swallowed hard. "I can't go."
"I'm afraid you'll have to risk it," said Bolton. "I need much more preparation before I dare risk myself on such a venture."
"Wait," said Stevie. "I was only gone a few hours the first time. Then I was gone a week. Maybe next time I won't get back for years. Maybe never. That's a city of the dead. And the Ifrit." But Bolton was not listening.
"Gold and jewels," he mused. "You had better content yourself with jewels. You can carry more of them. Well, go back to sleep. Boris will bring you some food after a while. We've lost time. Much time. You'll be fit again tomorrow."
"But the Ifrit!" cried Stevie.
"You'll have to risk it," repeated Bolton heartlessly.
"I won't go!" yelled Stevie. Bolton's hands crashed into his mouth, flinging him back into the pillow.
"You'll go and you'll like it, and the next time you get the idea that you can talk to me in that tone, think of your well-being first."
He stalked from the room, and Stevie glowered at the empty door. He realized abruptly that he hated the man, hated his selfish cowardice, his avarice, his heartlessness. Oh, what he'd give to see Bolton in the hands of that Ifrit. He lay back and gloated over the picture, the salty taste of his cut lips, sickish sweet in his mouth. When next he was tied to the chair, Stevie was only a shadow of his old self. He had been thin enough before, but now he looked as though the slightest wind would blow him away. When he fought Boris, he might as well have kicked the side of a building for all the good it did him.
"Don't forget," said Bolton greedily, "that when you come back, you're to have your pockets full. Only the biggest stones, understand?"
Stevie kept still.
"If you don't,"
said Bolton, leaving it hang like a thunder cloud in the room. "I may never come back," said Stevie. "I tell you, an Ifrit."
"I'll take care of him,"
said Bolton, while Boris strapped the guinea pig down. "You'll what?" Seeing that Stevie's hands were now held in the arms of the chair, Bolton took a revolver from his jacket and put it in Stevie's pocket. The cold contact of the steel made Stevie start. I've never fired one. Please, it might go off and shoot me. I'd never use it on that Ifrit. It would be like using a bean shooter on an elephant."
"I want more diamonds," said Bolton, "and when you get them I will have accomplished my purposes without any risk to myself. Make certain that you succeed. You're a fool for not having brought more the first time."
Stevie glowered to the best of his ability. He knew now that this Bolton was far from courageous, that he was nothing more than an egotistical bully. But Stevie was weary, and he made no further argument. He felt like a splinter in a hurricane. It was too late for him to help himself. That fatal morning when he had let hunger get him into this could never be recalled, and now he knew that things would never again be the same. Bolton swiftly applied the needle, the chiliu, and the copper cap. He pushed forward the tray which bore the open book and bent the light upon the page. Suddenly Stevie decided that he would win for a change. He would not look at the open book. He would stare straight ahead into the dark with his eyes wide open and tell himself over and over that he was here in a room. That way he would keep contact. The doctor signaled to Boris, and they withdrew. Stevie looked straight ahead of him. The light gradually began to dim. He felt like smiling. He would not look at that page. And after a while, they would come in to see if he was gone, and there he'd be, laughing at them. But Stevie had not allowed for the fact that the human eye is constructed to focus upon the brightest object within the range of vision. It began to be an effort to keep his glance away from the whiteness of that page. Then he felt as though weights were hung on his eyelids to bring his eyes down. The light was fading rapidly. He could win if he could hold out another instant. But he didn't. He dropped his glance, and his traitorous mind scooped up. "Be rejoiced, O Emir, for this is the city of brass, and this is the appearance of it that I find in the book of hidden treasures." It was dark. The great wheel was spinning. The far-off siren swooped near with its piercing scream. Worlds, comets, flames, and thunder. Stevie felt the sick terror rip at him, and prepared to fall and fall and fall. But he didn't. Before he thought he was well started, something solid was against his back. Slowly, he opened his eyes. Chapter 6. He was not very surprised to find that he had returned to the plains outside the city of brass. What concerned him more was the change which had taken place in himself. He had always thought of his body as being scrawny, but it wasn't now. He had, but a few seeming minutes before, been too weak to lift his hand. But now he was strong. It came over him that these journeys were changing him. Less and less of him had come back to the land of his birth. And now, Now would there be enough attraction in that land ever to pull him home again? Would he ever again vanish as he had when in the hand of the Ifrit? Or was it more likely that now he had captured the strength which should long ago have been his, that he could never quit this plane? Mournfully he stared at the great bright towers in the distance. He had arrived quite some way from them this time, and his surroundings. He stared about him and hastily scrambled to his feet. He was in a cemetery. Ruined tombs and stones were everywhere about him, and grass waved gently among them. Was it not enough, he told himself, to have the whole city dead? Again he looked at the brass towers. Something seemed to have changed about the outer walls and plains before them, and at first he could not identify the difference. And then it came to him that tall grass now grew where only sand had been before. And not only tall grass, but tilled fields of wheat. But that wasn't possible. He had quitted the place only a day and a night before, and certainly wheat took months to plant and cultivate. But what a change it had made! The whole lifeless aspect had become one of gentle motion. Wind over that wheat made it undulate in waves. Certainly, he told himself, wheat could not grow untended. He came abruptly to his feet to shade his eyes against the warm and pleasant afternoon sun. Yes, he was right. There were men with crooked sticks for plows working in that far field, and there at the right were several workmen walking along the road. Stevie couldn't believe it. Where had these people come from so swiftly? Where had this wheat gotten its start? Men on the roads, driving donkeys that drew laden carts toward the town, next took Stevie's attention. He sat down, overcome with astonishment. Was this the same place? Those two towers, those black stone walls. Yes, it must be the city of brass. Nearer at hand he beheld a flash of sun on metal. Under a cloud of dust were a dozen troopers, their long white capes flowing out from them, their horses proceeding with mincing steps. The brass helmets and steel swords were enough to blind a man. Stevie decided suddenly that he had better not be seen by this patrol. There was no telling what would happen to him now. His clothing was so strange that he would certainly be picked up. He cast about him for a hiding place, and found a nearby ruined house toward which he made his swift way. As he neared it, he saw two jackals rush from it and slink out of sight in a ditch. Stevie peered cautiously into the dark interior, and then decided that where jackals were, there could be no lions. He looked back at the rapidly approaching troopers and went inside. He fumbled his way across the floor, hoping to find a better hiding place, and his outstretched hand encountered something sticky. He withdrew it quickly and wiped it upon his trousers leg. When he moved again, his foot connected with something soft and yielding. Exploring fingers found an arm. He moved his hand upward toward the head and suddenly leaped a foot backward. The thing had no head. He heard the beat of horses' hooves and lost no time in dodging into a corner. As soon as the patrol passed, he would get out of this place with all speed. He had had sufficient corpses to last him a long, long time. The sound died, to be immediately followed by the creak of saddle leather and the jingle of chains and weapons. Stevie made himself as small as possible. How could those men have found this very place? For what were they looking? And then he saw something outside he had not seen before. A torn veil waved forlornly in the wind like a flag of distress. The troopers bulked through the door. Stevie stilled his chattering teeth. If they found him now.
"Search the place,"
bellowed the Wally. A sergeant began to poke his sword around. Presently he connected with the corpse and, with a grunt, dragged the thing into the light. It was, Stevie saw, a young woman, headless and dreadfully torn.
"Where is the head?"
said the Wally. The sergeant came back and searched for a long time. making careful examination of every square foot of floor. Then he began poking his sword into the corners. Stevie dodged the keen edge to the right. He dodged it to the left, but he made a rustling sound. The sergeant grabbed and held hard.
"I've got him!"
he yelled. Stevie was dragged out into the sunlight and thrown down before the mounted officer.
"No head,"
said the Wally. "No head," said the sergeant. "Just him."
"A ghoul,"
decided the Wally.
"Don't give him a chance to turn into an animal and get away. You see there's no head?"
"Certain," said the sergeant.
"That settles it. He ate the head, so he must be a ghoul. Tie him up."
"Wait," cried Stevie. "This is all wrong. I didn't even know that the young woman was in there. I saw you coming and dodged inside."
"You ran away when you saw troops," said the Wally, "so you must have done something. Tie him up."
The men fell upon Stevie and lashed him securely, and, for all his protests, threw him over the horn of a saddle. "I've done nothing," cried Stevie. "I'm innocent."
"The caddy will decide that," said the Wally. "We've been having trouble with ghouls. If you change into anything, then I'll know that you are a ghoul for certain, so watch what you do."
Suddenly Stevie recalled the face of Tedmer. She was too beautiful and kind to allow such injustice. "Take me to your ruler and let her decide. If you do not," he cried, "the crime will be yours. Take me to your ruler." The Wally looked uncomfortable.
"Did you not kill that woman?"
"I did not."
"Have you any evidence that you didn't?"
"Take me to your ruler," cried Stevie. "She will receive all the evidence I have in my behalf." The Wally gave a crisp order and rode back toward the town, pulling at his silky black beard in deep thought. "If I am innocent," called Stevie, "then you will be guilty of my murder." He could say no more. He needed all his breath to hold his saddlebag position before the trooper. The city of brass drew near, but Stevie could only see the mount's withers. He heard the gate guard salute the Wally and watched the hooves going over cobblestones. At long last they reached a flight of steps and Stevie was hauled from the horse. The captain of the palace guard, a red-faced, boisterous fellow, shouted,
"What strange thing have you, Asib?" "It's probably a ghoul," said the Wally.
"Asib?
He demands to see our ruler." "The man is plenty mad," said the guard captain. "But if he wishes to die, who can stop him?"
They pushed Stevie through the great doors. This was another entrance than the one he had first found, and the furnishings had all been changed in the halls. They came to the room with the floor like a lake, and Stevie saw that this was now the throne room, and he saw something else. A hawk-faced fellow, with eyes as cruel as any falcon's, was seated upon the throne. The crown upon his head was the same one Tedmer had worn, as easily seen by the two stones which shone like twin suns over the man's dark brow. He was transacting business, and Stevie had to wait his turn. "Your Majesty," said a complaining citizen, "these slaves stole a chicken destined for a feast. I had no thought to bother you with such trifles, but these troopers heard the row and came upon me, beating him." The slave, a youth, regarded his master with clear, contemptuous eyes.
"Your punishment was too lenient," said the king. "If you do not know how to handle slaves, you should be fined. Pay 100 thalers to the treasurer and be gone."
The man was angry, but he dared not show it. He gave the slave a sign to follow, but the guard captain made another sign, and the slave was pulled back.
100 lashes on his feet," said the ruler. "Theft from his master."
The boy was instantly snatched by two men, and a brawny Nubian advanced with a handful of split bamboo sticks. He took the sign from the ruler and immediately fell to work. Stevie turned his face away to avoid seeing the spurt of blood. The whip fell endlessly on the young man's bare feet, and at last ceased. The slave was senseless.
When he recovers, put him in the labor corps, said the ruler. Was it that thing? What is that thing you have there, Wally? A ghoul, your majesty. He was skulking about a ruin. Death, said the ruler. Next case. He was skulking about a ruin, braved the Wally, and there was a murdered woman close by without her head. Death by torture, said the ruler. Stevie cried, Wait! You can't do this! I am no ghoul! Death by slow torture, said the ruler, his brows dark. The guard captain flung Stevie into the hands of two soldiers, and they dragged him away down a long hall. He was stunned by the change. Where he had expected the beautiful Tedmer to show him leniency, he had found a cruel despot wearing her crown. 24 hours before, by his own reckoning, this entire city had been one of the dead. Wheat in the fields, murder on the outskirts, a tyrant on the throne. The guards prodded him along towards the dungeons. They were two brute-faced fellows of little understanding, and they treated Stevie gingerly, having heard the charge of ghoul. They knew very well the powers of a ghoul, and they knew what were the practices of such. Ghouls beat the country to lie in wait along roads, to frighten old dames, to terrify children, to howl in the wind, to whine at doors, to bark in the night, to haunt ruins, to cast spells, to grin in the shadows, to visit tombs, to sniff at the dead, to commit 1,000 assaults and provoke 1,000 calamities. And ghouls changed their shape and ate human heads besides. Not for a fortune would they touch him. Stevie tried to talk to them, but, with all the haste, they thrust him into a dungeon and clanged the door shut upon him. He heard them say to the prison guard, A ghoul in number 8, watch yourself. Silence settled over the prison. Occasionally there was a shuffle of feet, and the guard would glance into Stevie's cell to make certain he was still there. Occasionally, too, a muffled sobbing sounded nearby. Stevie at last began to rove the dungeon. He was astonished to find that they had locked him in with the slave they had beaten. If they really thought him a ghoul, how little they cared what happened to this poor youth. The boy's condition was, at the moment, so much worse than Stevie's, that Stevie's sympathy was instantly extended, and he forgot all about himself. There was water running in a trough, and Stevie took off his shirt to tear a strip from it. Using this as a sponge, he began to wipe the blood away from the wounds on the boy's legs. At first the slave drew swiftly away from him, but when he saw at last that Stevie meant no harm, and as he had not heard Stevie's charge, he at last relented and let his aching wounds be soothed. "I did not steal," said the boy. "My master's daughter and I love each other, and the master caught us talking. He did not want to spoil his reputation, and so he accused me of theft. Oh, I shall die now. I know I shall. The Labor Corps have yet to release a man alive. God curse this tyrant, Graco." Instantly he glanced about to see if he had been overheard, and then at Stevie to find out if Stevie might betray him for those words, which would of course mean instant death. "You call this King Graco?" "Aye," said the boy. For 4 long years this country has writhed beneath his crushing heel." 4 years? Gaped Stevie. "But I was here the day before yesterday, and—" The look in the boy's eyes stopped him. 4 years? It doesn't seem possible. Tell me, where is Tedmer?" "Ah, Tedmer," said the boy. "We went to sleep one afternoon from the great heat, and the next morning when we all woke, Tedmer was no longer queen. This Graco, may God spit on his soul, had already organized the worst of the troops to revolt. He was less than a speck of filth upon the city street, an informer for the police, but he had organized well. His men seized control. It would never have happened, never, if Tedmer had been here to prevent it." "But where is she?" said Stevie in alarm. "Who knows? She was in her palace the night before. People saw her enter.
Some of her female slaves helped her dress as though for a state occasion. She would tell no one anything, but she seemed very sad, and the following day, when the city woke, the worst element in the army acted swiftly and took possession of the palace. Some say that Graco killed her and hid her body in the palace. Did anyone say anything about a djinn? Oh yes, replied the boy. Several people about the foot of the northernmost tower and the guard at the top all swear that they saw an ifrit. You don't believe in ifrits? Believe in them, said the boy in a puzzled way. Why? Is there any doubt about ifrits? They've been seen in the town before? Why, certainly. The jinn of the desert are bad people, some of them very powerful. Those platforms you might have seen along the wall are fire platforms. The jinn cannot stand fire, praise God. The great towers are built to look like flame. Tell me, he said, are you from so very far away that you don't know of these things? Yes, from very far away. Your clothes seem very odd. From beyond the desert? Even farther, said Stevie wistfully. I cannot understand how you could have come here. Few people are even able to cross the desert alive, you know. An army tried it once, and even now hunters sometimes bring in helmets and swords. The army wished to vanquish us, but it was caught in the sandstorms and suffocated. Vanquished instead. The only thing we fear here is the jinn. They are a godless tribe. Would that Suleiman had wiped them forever from the earth. He thought he had, you know. Are they very big, these jinn? Big! 10 cubits tall at the very least. But they are stupid for all their command of magic. There are those who say that the jinn learned their magic from the wise men of old and only know the forms. Yes, they are stupid fellows, praise Allah. They are terrified of flames, and they cannot seem to act in orderly accord, being always at war with one another, never able to organize any attack methods in a body. Individualists, you might say. Stevie was struck by the manner of the youth's speech, and his excellent choice of words. If you'll pardon me, you seem to be, you don't appear to be the kind of person I should imagine a slave would be. The boy was instantly haughty, but, seeming to recall the good office that Stevie had performed for him, overcame the impulse to be harsh. You would not know that, of course. I and my fellows are called slaves, certainly, and for 4 years we have known nothing but hardship. When Graco became tyrant, all the nobles of the realm were seized with all their goods. The more influential and the best loved were put to death, and all their families were given in slavery. The slaves were thus freed and became the masters. In theory, perhaps, it might be marked down as retribution, but there has never been hereditary inheritance of titles in this land, and only those who benefited the community at large were raised to a high place. Their sons, because of breeding perhaps, and education, could follow only on their own merits. Slaves themselves could purchase their own emancipation, but most of them were too eager to be associated with the nobility in any capacity to wish ardently for a freedom which meant less protection and more arduous labor. My father was Gaiman, and I am Shakkar. Then it is not ordinary spite which places you here, said Stevie. No, I am afraid that Graco would like to see an end of me, just as that petty burgher was anxious to find fault with me. But then, he added with a smile, the lout who was my master has lost valuable property, and has, in addition, been fined. And Graco has lost the youth who was once the best archer in the army. Spite blinds men to values, and because of spite, I am to lose my life. You will forgive my seeming weakness for an hour ago. I was almost insensible. My father in paradise would be ashamed to know that Shakkar wept. If only Tedmer were here, said Stevie. I know everything would be all right. I have prayed for that all these 4 years, said Shakkar. You have no faintest idea where she might be? Or even if she be alive, said Shakkar. Tell me, my friend, you seem to have more than an interest in justice from our queen. If you had known her, you would... Oh, I knew her, said Stevie. That is, I saw her. But you said you seem to know nothing of this town. Oh, indeed I saw her, said Stevie. When this city slept, she reclined in all... He stopped, realizing that it might be better not to tell this youth that the night might well have been centuries long. How is this? You know not these people, but you know the city. You saw the queen? Where? In her chamber. You were in her chamber? Gaped the youth. By the gods and devils, my friend, you must be a magician. But you seem to be human. No, forgive me, of course you are human, but I do not understand how you could have seen her. Stevie ached to tell Shakkar about that strange period in the city while it was dead, about the Ifrit, about the queen and the tablet of gold, but he held his peace and talked casually. You are a strange fellow, said Shakkar. You have the face and brow of the scholar, of one who spends too much time alone until he doubts his own powers and quails before the world. I see that your arm is strong and your body lean. Perhaps I am too inquisitive. I might be called a scholar, said Stevie. And your name? Jebson. Ah, is that all of it? Well, Stephen Jebson. Stephen? What odd sounds. L. Stephen. Yes, that is easier to say. L. Stephen Ab Jebson. Footsteps were coming down the hall, and they stopped talking. The whole guard was there, and in their center, resplendent in beautiful robes, stood Graco, his evil thin face lighting up as he saw Shakkar by the light of the captain's torch.
You seem to have found your way here at last, said Graco. I trust your sojourn under the banner will be brief, Shakkar. Bring him out.
2 troopers advanced, but, despite his wounded feet, Shakkar brushed them aside and walked alone. With contempt upon his face, he passed Graco and took up a position between the 2 files. Only once did his face soften, and then it was to bid farewell to Stevie. Goodbye, called Shakkar, and luck.
You are as careless as ever about your company, said Graco. Now you've made up to a ghoul. I think I am justified in those things I do. You are wanting in sense.
The man is a ghoul? Scoffed Shakkar. Ill-begotten spawn of filth, he is worth 1,000 of you. The bastinado cracked on the youth's naked back.
Only my well-known clemency restrains me from altering your fate, snapped Graco. You'll soon sing a different song.
They marched away while the prison guard slammed the door in Stevie's face. The long night began to drag its weary length. Stevie had no inkling as to his time of execution, and he was not sure that he wanted to know. But he supposed it would be on the following day. The later the better. He was strangely calm. For all these bewildering weeks he had been unable to sit down and realize his position clearly. Events had scooped him high, but he was becoming injured to surprise. If anything happened now, he thought, he would not even blink at it. He had entered a story, and the story was writing itself on, and there wasn't anything he could do to stop it. He realized fully that the story had been tampered with, and that he was the author of its strange continuance. But to author Graco, he shuddered. The man had no mercy in his unclean soul. If Tedmer had remained queen, none of this would have happened. But Tedmer was not queen. He stirred restlessly, watching the stars through the barred window of his prison. For a while he traced out the constellations, feeling pleased that they at least had not changed. This also brought him calmness. He smiled a little at himself for the stupid way he had been thrown about, for his inability to stop the events which had befallen him. He, who had once thought himself so wise, He who had dreamed of being the friend of Lancelot and Galahad, Prince Diamond or Aladdin, he had now wished to throw himself back into their periods. He had told himself that he wouldn't have acted that way. No, indeed. But he had been as helpless before irresistible fate as any romantic hero. And at times he had thought to himself, if I could but go back there with my modern knowledge, I'd show them a thing or two. Well, he was back there, and his modern knowledge had, so far, been so much excess baggage. At midnight he told himself that he was a coward. At 3 he was certain of it, and with that he crossed the bridge. At 4 he was determined to combat it, and he fancied that perhaps the shades of all his heroes would at least approve of him if he gracefully went to his death. No, he wouldn't show them the white feather. He would march out and take it, and never a sound would pass his lips. Suddenly he felt better. A cold breath of dawn came into the dungeon, and he watched the east grow pearl. He had not played an enviable part in any of this. He had not acted very like a man, but he would show them he knew how to die like one. If only he hadn't blundered into that patrol, or if he had been brave enough to march forth to meet it, he would not be here now. Perhaps he would be searching for Tedmer. He realized abruptly that he had no business getting killed. He was needed. He had struck that gong, and he brought all this misfortune upon this town. But far more than that, he knew he wanted to find the beautiful girl who had seemed to smile a welcome at him. But no, he would never find her. He could not even search for her. She was either dead or still asleep, or... He sat up straight. Who had been in that town with him but the Jinn? Who wished to bring evil to the city of brass but the Jinn? And what better way to further torture this city than to make off with the greatly adored Tedmer? He threw himself down upon the straw to scowl bitterly into the greyness. What a witless fool he was, to walk into the arms of Graco when there was a chance of finding Tedmer. Rumor had it she was not there. Very well, he would find her. He would. The footsteps of the pacing guard told him that the quest was ended before it began. In a few hours he would die. He tossed restively. Something gouged him in the back, and he moved it. They had been so afraid to touch a ghoul that they had not even searched him. With shaking hands he examined the revolver. Just this against the multitude? Just this? But it was certain death otherwise. For the sake of Tedmer. The thought gave him courage. For the sake of Tedmer. And so he waited until mid-morning brought the execution squad to collect its miserable quota for the public execution. They did not touch Stevie. They signed him with the points of their swords to stay between the files, and then, through the low hallway they moved forward, weapons clanking, toward the square before the palace, where a few morbidly curious had gathered already about the 6 stakes set in the pave.